Not really. Trying to decide what my next step is. Do that, and then I'll move on. Yeah, I gotta make a decision. I mean, I don't pretty much made it, but
Yeah, I'm
sure.
actually sweating. All right, here's the guys. Hi.
Men of the hour. Yeah, no, he's right next to the center. Here?
The words matter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Harris County DA's not here. I will. I got his back. Don't you worry. Got his left flank. Yeah. I think he's got a team behind him. Yeah, I think we'll be fine. Oh my gosh. Apparently Leach was tweeting something this morning, or his wife was, except for Lieutenant Governor off.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, I hate that when it's that stuck there.
I have long legs, wide
You
knees.
should try it with a skirt on. It's not fun. Well, ours.
No, actually,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But they're. Some of them are from this very city. Oh, not all of them, though. Some of them, a little bit. Well, I don't know. You mean the one that didn't? Oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. Okay, yeah. Yeah. And then what about this one, the one he signed? It says here at 5.
well, I'm not going to talk
Oh, yeah, this is what he told me. Yeah.
but I'm going to talk about the ones that didn't.
Yeah, it's still the same.
But I might have you fill in on what the 87 is the one before everything.
Yeah.
And SGR 1 is the
Felony illegals. Didn't respond. Text message with his wife. Yeah. So he texted. I didn't respond. Well, because I don't post anymore broadcasting. But he texted me and said that they had changed it or taken it down or something. I never responded to it. He must have gotten me.
Yeah, long time no see. Missy, man. You doing all right? There he is. Are you a sheriff today or a council member? Here. Great to see you, man. Congratulations. Congratulations on you. Yes, sir. Plaque up on your wall. Yes, sir. Small one.
There's two. Don't worry about it.
Hey, Caroline. Doing well. Maze, how's it going, man? Thank you for making this happen. See you. Okay. Thank you. You two guys. Sure. Bye now.
Governor?
Governor? Well, you want me to make an announcement? I don't know. Let's see how much pull she has.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Rania Mankarios, CEO of Crime Stoppers of Houston. What a very special day today is. I want to thank Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, Senator Joan Huffman, Chairman John Smithy, law enforcement partners, district attorneys, so many other distinguished guests, elected officials, board members, Andy Kahn, Amy Castillo, the victims, the survivors, and everyone gathered here today. This is more than a bill signing. This is a day of reckoning. Today marks a historic moment in a fight for change that we began in 2018, a fight to stop a broken bail system from endangering the very people it's supposed to protect. Too many families have paid the ultimate price for a system that has failed them. Too many officers have risked their lives rearresting violent offenders. Too many communities have been shattered by repeat criminals who should not have been released. We know this because we've lived it. We've sat across from grieving parents and surviving family members. We've combed through court documents that read like warnings that no one heeded. And through our Glenda Gordy Research Center, the number confirmed our worst fears. In Harris County alone, hundreds of defendants have been charged with secondary homicides while out on a felony bond. If you've been arguing to keep that practice going, something is wrong. This isn't just bad policy, it's the intentional destruction of communities, and it must stop. So for us, doing nothing was never an option. We took hits, as the governor knows, we took punches, but we never stopped advocating. While cities across the country struggle with the fallout of failed bail reform, we at Crime Stoppers of Houston rolled up our sleeves, worked with our board, our executive team, and lawmakers across multiple sessions, never losing sight of one thing: public safety must come first. We share critical data and firsthand accounts with Governor Abbott and Senator Huffman, and we all understand that critical data that we were discussing was more than names and numbers on a spreadsheet. These were the lives of dearly beloved individuals, fellow citizens who were needlessly and recklessly killed. For all of us, this was a resounding call to action. And now today, we stand on the verge of real, lasting change. Senate Bill 9, Senate Bill 40, House Bill 75, especially SJR 5, the proposed constitutional amendment represents more than a policy shift. They are promises kept. Promises to victims that their voices mattered, promises to families that we heard their pain, promises to Texans that we will not let violent offenders turn our communities into revolving doors of danger. But while we are extremely thankful to all who got us here today, we know it's not the end. It's the beginning of the next challenge to pass this constitutional amendment in November. So we urge every Texan to vote to keep your community safe. So I'd like to further take a moment to thank those who helped us today. Governor Abbott, thank you for being a constant advocate for safer communities and for signing these historic bills here today in Houston, where this fight began. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, your personal time with victim families spoke volumes. Your empathy turned into action. Senator Joan Huffman, your leadership and relentless resolve delivered this amendment through the legislature. We thank you for standing firm when it mattered most. Chairman John Smithy, thank you for building bipartisan support and amplifying a call for change in the House. To the victims, many of you are here today, to those who testified, who stood up, who lived their tragedies over and over again. You shared your pain so that others would not go through the same. We thank you. You are the heroes of this moment. To the entire team at Crime Stoppers of Houston, I'm so proud, so deeply proud of this moment. As I've said from the beginning, it's a legislative process, but it should have never been political. So with that, Governor Abbott, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, a very big thank you to Rania. Thank you for your kind words, but more importantly, thank you for the tireless work that you and Crime Stoppers have put into this cause for a long, long time now. I think it's probably fair to say, for anybody who knows anything that goes on with Crime Stoppers, we probably would not be at this bill signing today had it not been for the tireless day after day, week after week, year after year effort by Crime Stoppers. You've changed the state of Texas. I want to put Crime Stoppers under the broader umbrella of advocate groups. And I know there are many other advocate groups, both here in Houston as well as across the state of Texas, who stood up and fought for this. One thing that our legislators need during a time of battle to get things passed, they need those advocates to come testify, to demonstrate the necessity of this legislation. Your testimony, your advocacy made a difference and ensured that I would be able to sign these laws today.
to the victims and their family members. They go through so much challenge. They feel the weight of the world on their lives. They step up and talk and hope and pray and talk to politicians and hear words. And I think after a few years, they think, all of this is for nothing. For nothing. We're not getting anything to address the pain and suffering that not only did we suffer, but that was caused by sheer tragedy. Today, that pain is answered. Because of what you and your families have been to, not only are we signing laws that correct the wrongs that caused you to suffer, but your efforts have led to a rewriting of the Constitution of the state of Texas to ensure criminals like those who harmed your families will never be out on the loose again. Cannot thank Lieutenant Governor and Speaker Burrows enough for prioritizing this. I know you prioritized this a long time, and you're from Harris County area. You know this issue like the back of your hand. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for helping to make sure that it swiftly passed the Senate. Thank you for the stewardship of Senator Huffman, who knows more about this, back going to your judicial days in Harris County, to your time in the Senate, as well as Chair Smithy. And you know what Rania said about you, we all knew going into this, the tallest hill to climb was going to be in the Texas House. And when it got down to it, on SJR 5, how many total votes did we have?
It was well over 100.
There was a lot.
Yeah.
There was bipartisan support. And as I look around, we have with us today members of the Texas legislature, both Republican and Democrat, who saw the urgency to get this passed. Another group of people with us today who fight for us every day, quite literally with their lives, and that is law enforcement officials. We cannot be a safe city, county, or state, or nation without these law enforcement officials putting their lives on the line, and those lives were under assault by these judges who were letting these criminals loose, criminals that they arrested to put behind bars only to see back out on the streets just a few hours later, threatening the lives of the very law enforcement officers who arrested them in the first place. This group of laws is as much for those law enforcement officers and their protection and their safety as much as anything else. So please give it up to every man and woman who wears the uniform of our law enforcement officers. This session, we confronted a crisis, a revolving door bail system that repeatedly released dangerous criminals back out onto the streets. Hundreds of Texans have been murdered by violent criminals who had previously been arrested and released on easy bail. That's why I made bail reform an emergency item this session. Judges have had far too much discretion to set easy bail policies for violent criminals. One of the many horror stories from Harris County involves Austin Collette. Austin Collette was charged with murder, and then he pled guilty for that murder charge. And while this man who is a confessed killer was waiting to be sentenced, Harris County District Judge Hillary Unger let this confessed killer out of jail back onto the streets on bail. 3 months after the judge let him out to roam the streets again, he killed again. This time, a 21-year-old young woman. That woman would be alive today if the laws that I'm about to sign were in effect at that time. With these laws, judges will no longer be able to grant bail for violent crimes like murder and rape if the prosecutor shows that the defendant is a flight risk and a danger. Judges who do release violent defendants on bail must explain their decision to the public in writing. Prosecutors will now have a new tool. Prosecutors will have the right to appeal a judge's questionable bond decision. Also, unaccountable magistrates will now be barred from setting bail in the most dangerous and high-risk cases. Instead, it's going to be elected judges who must make those decisions. And now we are preventing nonprofits from using your tax dollars to bail criminals out of jail. As one victim's father told me, our criminal justice system gives offenders the opportunity to go back to their lives. Meanwhile, the victims can never go back to their lives, and neither can their grieving families. That travesty ends today, thanks to the hard work of the Texas House and Senate. Lives are going to be saved because of the action they took this session. Now, let's make this law. Every time I look for the date, my watch covers it up. Today's
The third.
The day of the
it's like a curse.
One day after Sinai died.
So I don't get to pay attention to that because I'm still in business.
So are we.
So are we, actually.
We're in business.
And someone's mic just got cut off. You know how to do that?
You sign, yeah, I do this a little bit.
Thank you.
Why don't you hold that one up? Now I want to turn it over to Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick.
Thank you, Governor. I've known Andy Kahn a long time. We started the Crime Commission about 35 years ago, I think, long before I was in office, to look at this issue. I've been involved with Crime Stoppers, and Ronnie, thank you for the incredible job you do, and all the board members and all the volunteers. Incredible speeches a few years ago from crime victims, not from elected officials, but from crime victims who told their stories. I want to thank Senator Huffman. She's been on this for 3 or 4 sessions now, and we passed bills out of the Senate time and time again. They didn't pass in the House, and that's why I thank Dustin Burrows, the new Speaker, who finally had the courage to say, we're going to pass these bills. You know, we all love Jocelyn, and we'll never forget her. And her family has been with us all this time. And I brought Mom and other victims' families into Dustin's office in the beginning of session. And I said, we have judges in this town who are letting murderers out, rapists out, child sex offenders out, that we have hundreds and hundreds out on the street now that have committed violent crimes that should not be out. And he was amazed. He's from Lubbock. He said, we don't allow that in Lubbock. That doesn't happen. I think he said they had 12 murders in the last year, its entirety. So the fact that we were able to tell the story of Harris County and Houston to a rural speaker, and with our friend John from the Panhandle, who said, it doesn't impact me, but it impacts Harris County and Houston. And when it impacts the largest city in the state and the largest county in the state, and those criminals can go to other counties and travel across Texas and commit crimes, they stood up. At the same time, on this glorious day that we're standing up, there were two bills, Senate Bill SJR 87 and SJR 1, that did not pass. We were within, what, 2 or 3 votes, Governor? 3 votes. And he called out a name of a DA who let a murderer out. We've called out names of judges who don't even work and let murderers out. I want the voters in these districts to call their Democrat members and say, Alma Allen, Anna Hernandez, Ann Johnson, Morales, Rosenthal, Simmons, Thompson, Wally, Ward, Hubert Vo, Gene Wu. Where are those Democrats to not stand for the crime victims in this county and in this city? Their voters, I challenge any of those who blocked SJR 87 and SJR 1, bring me 5 residents who think murderers should be out on the street. Bring me 5 voters who say that illegal immigrants should be out on the street to kill little girls. You find me those people in those Democrat districts. Democrats stood in the Senate and the House to pass these bills. But these 2 important bills did not pass because we were 3 votes short. So the voters in Harris County and Houston and Fort Bend County, Ron Reynolds is another, voters, they are the ones still letting illegal immigrants who commit violent crimes out, and they are still the ones letting people who are citizens of this country out on the streets to kill again. And we will not stop in the Senate. I know the governor will not stop until we pass SJR 1 and SJR 87, whether it's in a special session or the next session. We will not stop until these criminals and these illegal immigrants who are here committing crimes and killing little girls under a bridge are put in jail forever and never let out on bail or bond. And we need their help, the Democrats in Harris County and Houston, to get those bills across the line.
Now, Senator Huffman.
Well, good afternoon. It's great to be here. And, you know, it's hard for me to talk about this because I usually get emotional because I guess from my days as a prosecutor and a judge, you know, when you work with victims and you sit in a courtroom and, you know, you have such courageous families who have to live and hear about what's happened to their precious children or their parents or their sisters or their mothers. And what strikes me about victims is there's this quiet courage and this belief in the system. And that's what always floored me, is that how could they be so brave and so strong and sit there and listen to the worst details that you could ever imagine about someone they love so much. But they do it because they show up. And that's what the victims who fought for this reform did. They were quiet, courageous, and patient. I remember several times as this failed over the years, and I kept passing it, I would make the plea, we are failing these folks. We are failing these victims' families. But I feel today that we have a measure of success. So my prayer is that what we've managed to accomplish does give these victims and their families at least some measure of peace and belief that the system is working for them and listening to them. I will say that it is really the honor of my life and so humbling to be in a position where I could be a voice for you. I tried to be a strong voice. We have had success, and in my heart, I believe that this will make a difference to the safety of people in Texas, to the victims. What started out as just a public kind of a change in policy as we started to see, you know, the crime numbers growing. Andy Kahn, you were so great about keeping the data and Crime Stoppers. But it kept growing and growing, and then it became a quest to save lives, literally to save lives. And I do believe that what the governor has signed today will save lives. And so I'm going to say that that's a success. And I hope that the victims feel that way, but I will keep fighting for you, and we'll keep fighting until we have a system that works for everyone, including the victims. So thank you very much. Thank you, Governor.
Representative Smithy.
Well, thank you, Governor. And I will say I've known Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick for a number of years and been involved in a number of issues and legislation with them, but I've never known either one of them to be as passionate about legislation as they were about this. And it was their hard work and determination to get this across the finish line that made it happen. So thank you all for what you did. And as Lieutenant Governor Patrick said, for the first time really in a while, we had a speaker in Speaker Burrows who was determined to get this passed and worked hard to get it done. And I'll say this about Governor Abbott. When we would get in negotiations, and we seemed to be at loggerheads, he would actually show up and try to get it resolved. I've never seen a governor do that, want to pass a bill so bad and to get that done, and we appreciate y'all staying with us. And Senator Huffman, when we first talked about this, she said, "This is my baby. This is like a child to me." She said, "Please don't hurt my child." And when she said that, I knew that it had a special meaning to Senator Huffman, and it did. And so I told our colleague, and also I need to say one word about our colleagues in the House who are here today. We have several colleagues, but particularly Representative Louderback, Representative Cook, and Representative Little. We were all on the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee together. We would have never gotten this bill passed, I can tell you, in the Texas House without their just tireless work on getting this done. We had to get a lot of votes to get this passed, and we didn't have them, and then we were able to get them. And so their work was extremely important. I told, you know, I always said this bill was not about me, or it's not about Senator Huffman or even the governor or lieutenant governor. It was always about the victims and their families. And it's their bill. And, you know, I told our colleagues, it's not every day you get to work on a bill that will save lives. But I've also said that if this legislation changes one, or it saves one little girl's life, or one mother, or one grandmother, or one son, or one father, every trip that these victims and their families made to Austin, every hour that they sat there patiently waiting to testify, every minute that they sat watching House proceedings and Senate proceedings, every one of those minutes will be worth it to save one more life, and it will do that. And so I would just say now, get to work. We got to get this passed in November. It's got SJR 5 has to pass the voters. But, you know, the voters on these types of things seem to have clearer eyes sometimes than the legislature does. And I predict this is going to pass overwhelmingly, and our goal, I think, should be around 90%. If we can get 90%, we're doing good.
Thank you. So back in the 1990s, I was a state district judge in Harris County. And in about 1994, I was fed up with what were easy parole policies. And I got to know a man named Andy Kahn. Right, was that three decades ago? Who was still in kindergarten at the time, I think.
He never changes.
And we worked with a woman and some others to form an organization called Justice for All in an early effort to combat the types of challenges that we're combating today. So I know firsthand, 3 or 4 decades, whatever it is.
Yes, 3 decades.
3
at
decades.
least, going on
So
4.
Andy has been in this fight for 3 decades. No one knows as much about it, is involved or cares as much, or has as much institutional knowledge about waging this fight. And I'm proud to be able to call him a friend and introduce him at this time.
Thank you, guys. Tough to follow that intro. My name's Andy Kahn. I'm the Director of Victim Services for Crime Stoppers of Houston. Let me say, a lot of people in this room said, you know, we've never seen you smile. Guess what? Today's the day. I'm smiling. I first met Amy Castillo, and she sent me a Facebook message after her brother was murdered. And as Amy tells it, I was shocked you responded. I respond. I told Amy I was going to take a deep dive into the suspect that was charged with her brother's murder, and what I uncovered was shocking and disturbing. I had to tell Amy her brother was murdered by the defendant the very same day he failed to appear in court to have a GPS put on his ankle. Keep that in mind. He failed to appear in court and murdered Amy's brother that very same day. I had to tell Amy the defendant was also out on bond for aggravated robbery in Fort Bend County. And despite being on bond for aggravated robbery in Fort Bend County, he was allowed to post 2 more felony bonds in Harris County. I had to tell her that after the defendant was charged with capital murder on her brother that, yeah, you know, most capital murder defendants don't get out. It rarely happens. I was wrong. The last several years, I have had the privilege of watching Amy Castillo grow into a role as a voice for victims. This year, for the first time, she testified in support of the very bills that Governor Abbott signed today. Chairman Smithy, when you stated on the floor that even though these bills have our names on it, the bills belong to victims and surviving families. And on behalf of my constituents, we deeply appreciated your statement. I made a promise to Amy that her brother, Joshua Sandoval, would be a catalyst for change. Promise kept.
Hello, my name is Amy Castillo. I come here today because my brother's life matters. His name is Joshua Sandoval. As we became adults, life pulled us in different directions. But when he met the one whom he wanted to spend the rest of his life with, we were happy. Then came May 27th, 2021, the day that happiness was stolen from us. On that day, a man already out on 2 felony bonds decided my brother would not get to live out his life when he shot Josh in the heart. On that day, the offender was supposed to appear in court for violating his bond conditions. He failed to appear in court the very same day he killed my brother. And as if losing Josh wasn't enough, we were forced to endure even more injustice when we encountered the revolving door at the Harris County Courthouse. This man, charged with a capital murder while out on multiple felony bonds, was offered another bond. How is this possible? How is this justice? There is something deeply tragically wrong with the system that gives repeat violent felony offenders chance after chance, while families like mine are given a life sentence of grief. Our family was shocked when the defendant posted a bond for capital murder, despite already being on bond for 2 felonies. To add further insult to injury, Andy Kahn told us he was also out on bond in Fort Bend County for aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. This is the legal definition of insanity. To add more insult to injury, this offender was charged with another capital murder in Galveston County. Once again, he was given a bond for capital murder, and once again, he posted bond. I ask myself, why, in our great state, are we allowing victim families to suffer again and again? Why do more people have to die before bail reform legislation is passed? I cannot bring my brother back. As much as I want to, I cannot. But what I can do is use every ounce of what is left in my heart to fight. To fight for Josh, to fight for other families walking in our shoes. I am proud to have played a small role in getting these bills passed. I am proud to tell my brother he became a catalyst for change. We have formed Texas Crime Victims United, an organization to speak on behalf of families like mine and so many others. I encourage everyone here to join our movement. Last, I would like to thank the governor, the lieutenant governor, Senator Huffman, and Chairman Smithy for their leadership on getting these bills passed. Thank you.
Amy, your story puts a punctuation point on why these reforms, this legislation, this constitutional amendment were needed. You also made another point that's very important. You talk about the organization that you have organized, that you are advancing, and that you're urging others to support. That's in recognition of the reality. This fight is not over. We have to continue this fight. And the last thing I'll say is this, and that is there was a litmus test for every elected member in the Texas Capitol this session. Do they stand for and fight for the citizens in their district or the criminals who kill them? Many passed that test. Some of them failed that test. Those who failed that test will face their own reckoning. With that, we'll be happy to take a few questions.
Governor Abbott, we heard the Lieutenant Governor talk a little bit about those 2 constitutional amendments that didn't get passed. When looking through the totality of bail reform this session, what are your thoughts? Do you see a potential where you do a special to try to take a stab at some of those constitutional amendments again?
Yeah. First, I'll tell you this, and that is if you go back to my State of the State address, if you go back to what I talked about when I was here with Rania a few months ago, talking about the constitutional amendment that we want to get passed. What I was talking about in both of those episodes and many others was what was contained in Senate Joint Resolution 5 that I signed today. So the bail reform that I campaigned on and got passed is exactly what I want to turn into law. As others here, whether it be Senator Huffman, Representative Smithy, some of these state reps behind me, they know that around the same time we reached agreement on this, we realized, you know what, there are some other ideas we would like to also get passed. They had a late start. They didn't begin as early as my State of the State address or even before that. So perhaps they need a little bit more time to come to fruition. But to specifically answer your question, you can be assured that those other proposals, as Schwarzenegger would say, they're going to be back. And we are not done yet.
Governor, can I add something? None of this would happen today without the victims' families. But none of this would happen today without the governor taking the lead. And I know his heart on this issue. I know his mind on this issue. And whenever it happens, these members, many of them representatives from the Houston and Harris County area, they will be held accountable for their votes for criminals instead of victims. So whenever it happens, he will lead, we will lead, and trust me, it will happen.
Governor, last time you were in this room, you said that SJR 5 should require defendants to prove they're not a danger to the community. You said earlier, the way it ended up is prosecutors have to prove they're not, that these people are a danger. What happened between when you said that and this bill passed? And does this put some pressure on prosecutors to follow this process that's been set up this time?
To be quite specific about what happened, I sat in a conference room with some of the people at this table and some of the people sitting behind me. And we debated that issue for hours. And my recollection of that discussion is never before had they seen a burden put on a defendant to be able to prove that, especially in a situation where they may be unrepresented and be required to compromise their Fifth Amendment rights. And so what we decided to do instead was to adopt a standard that was derived from what is used in federal law that prosecutors deal with all the time. I mean, what they got to show is pretty easy, to be honest, and that is a person accused of murder is a danger to the community. Not hard. But here's the important part that I knew was coming, and that is even with that burden, there's going to be some leftist judge, progressive judge in Harris County who still may grant bail. The prosecutor, unlike before, now has the right to immediately appeal that disgusting decision. And while that appeal is undertaken, that criminal is going to remain behind bars. And we are going to be assured we're going to get a good appellate judge or even court of criminal appeals judge who's going to take the action needed to make sure that these dangerous criminals remain off our streets.
We're here today talking about accountability. There are thousands of stores across the state of Texas that sell THC consumable products. I want to know what your opinion of that is and whether you think it's a good thing that Texas can go in and buy these products today.
So you're talking about SB 3. And it is one of literally more than 1,000 bills on my desk, all of which need my careful consideration and evaluation. And I will give all of those pieces of legislation the consideration and time that they deserve.
I think as a dad, how do you feel about the fact that
Yeah, very nice twist to the question. You're still not going to get an answer. Yeah.
Last question.
Quite talented.
One of the points that opponents have brought up,
Sure, man, I'll come back to you.
one of the points that opponents have brought up about this is that many facilities are already overrun. There's too many people that are inside jail facilities and prisons right now. So what relief can people expect to see with the assumption that there may be more people now that are going to be in these facilities?
So we had the good fortune of having in our meeting room, in our debate room, a sheriff, A.J. Lauderback, who weighed in on that, went through the calculation of what this would mean to jails across the state of Texas, was in contact with the Sheriff's Association and other officials around the state of Texas to do the calculation. And we feel that the jails will be capable of doing that. To the extent they're not, we as a state will be capable to respond to that and make sure they do have the resources they need. We as a state understand it's a priority to keep dangerous, murderous criminals off the streets. We're willing to pay the governmental price to make sure we keep those people behind bars because it means that much to the safety of our citizens. Sure, ma'am.
Thank you, Governor. You, Senator Huff, and others referenced the ongoing efforts to
People are getting tired of being killed. It's simply that. People are being slaughtered in Harris County, and by people that government already has confined and then released. I'll use a line that I told these members as I was fighting for this. If a crime occurs for the first time, we might be able to consider that to be a societal problem. If a criminal gets arrested, a dangerous criminal, and gets confined, and then is released back on the streets, and then another vicious crime occurs, that goes beyond a societal problem. That's a governance problem. And what was needed here was a correction of governance to make sure our system was no longer broken and we would keep these people behind bars. Thank you all very much, but the biggest thanks goes to, for one, the victims, the families who've stood up, and most of all, to God Almighty for serving us all.